don't put your fingers here. Put a grip tight there. Your fingers will stay a lot longer and your cuts a lot straighter. Hi, I'm Jerry Jackshaw. Like most of you, I've had a lot of close calls with my table saw and kickbacks. Usually because I didn't use a featherboard. My featherboard hangs on the wall just like yours because it takes too long to set up. I came up with the grip tight magnetic featherboard. All you do is set it down. It's locked in place. Holds about 40 or 50 pounds sideways pressure and about 100 pounds straight up and down. You can easily release it using a lever to pop it up like this. It'll hold a piece of wood over against a fence. It'll hold a piece both over and down using the holdover. And you can use it off a steel fence if the fence is high enough to hold things down. You can use it before the blade and after the blade as long as you don't close the kerf. We make a steel fence plate like this that you attach to your fence. It has a return on the top that keeps it stiff on top. The Mesa Vista design fence plate can be easily added to any rip fence. Your fence plate should be as long as your fence. You can't have it longer than your fence. We make fence plates that are 30, 36, and 43 inches long. We'll cover attaching the fence plate later in the video. Adding the roller guide to your original grip tight on the side like this changes it into a much more versatile tool. We'll pull anything over to the fence, from a 4x8 sheet to a 1x8 like this, pulls it over very solidly. Even on a crooked board like this, the roller will pull the wood to the fence and the fin will stop the kickback. The roller guide will pull a piece of plywood right into the fence. It's at an angle, so every time you push, it just pulls right into the fence like that. You can use a second piece to push the first one through. If you're running a dado cut, you can use a second one virtually right on top of the blade. You've created a guard, you're holding it into the fence, and you're keeping it from kicking back with the fin. Cut the piece off. Just take your first grip tight, put it here. Take the second one, put it on the wood, and push the wood over to the fence. It'll snap out of your hand and be ready to cut. Just push in line with the blade. Just push in line with the blade. The best push stick is another board the same width. If you pull a board out, pull it level with the saw. If you want to cut little strips, just move your fence over close and tight here. Again, set up over here. Put the fin on it. Just put the fin on this side. It pulls over so tightly it'll close the kerf. If you put a roller on the back side, if it's within an inch of the blade. Remember, if you're within an inch of the blade with a fence, then tip the fin down. Use the roller in the front, the fin in the rear. If you get it more than an inch away from the blade, use the roller both before and after the cut. And now you can take an auxiliary piece of steel with a right angle bend and clamp it on right above the blade if you want to. You can use the grip tight to hold down a tall piece. If you need to run a tongue and groove cut, you can do it. If the board's a little bit crooked, or a lot crooked, or has a knot in it, you can still do it. Use grip tight in front of the blade to hold it over. You don't have to hold it down until it gets underneath the second grip tight. Always set your second one up first. Make sure you have a little pressure. Take it like this. Focus on holding the board level with the saw. A short table in front can be real helpful. This is also a good setup for jointing and shaping boards. Even a crooked board can be shaped and jointed and rabbited safely and accurately using the grip tights. Small boards can give us a lot of problems. I'm going to cut this one in half and then use my router here to make a piece of molding. The easy way to set a grip tight up is to move the L in for thinner pieces because it holds really, really tightly against kickback. Move it out for thicker pieces like 2x4s. This is a 3/4 inch one, so I'll put it about 3/4 inch out. Just set the L fin on the wood, bring this back and touch the wood and help it snap down. That's all there is to it. On the back side, move it out a little bit more and set it like this, a little bit of an angle in. That way it'll hold the wood. Put your finger behind the wood. Don't try to help hold it over. Just let your finger do the job. If you can't push a board through with one finger, you've set it up too tight. Your push stick is always held in place. Take a look at these cuts, you won't see near as many burns as you saw before. You won't see the rings and zings because it's held in place constantly. You'll still have to keep some woods moving through the blade or they'll burn. I have my router mounted on the table saw over here. It's very convenient. Steel pan lets me use it here. It's just like using a shaper with a cast iron. I'm going to take this little stick of wood and run an ogee on both sides of it. And I'm going to run two pieces at once. What I'll do is set up like this. Remember, put the L on first, bring this other one back. Come behind, just take a guess at it. Set it up, and then what I'll do is I'll push this one through with the second one. We've got two pieces of molding with no glitches whatsoever. And nobody had their hands within a foot of the blade while we were making those. You can do the same thing on a plastic router table, an aluminum router table, or if you have a drop-in router, all you do is take the L, put it in backwards, upside down. Put a piece of steel on your fence, up high. You can leave an 1.5 inches below and the grip Tite will still hold down, and just use it in reverse and run it like this. Take your second one and do the same thing. Very easy cut. A board like this can cause a lot of problems. A lot of woodworkers have short fingers on their left hand because they try to hold the board like this. The board kicks up and the hand goes into the blade. Don't do that. The setup is simple. Put the board on the saw, bring a grip Tite over in your left hand at an angle, bring it in, touch the wood, and let it come on down. The fin should just bend slightly. You don't need any more pressure to use a grip Tite than you do your fingers. It's very important to hold the board down while you're pushing it through the blade. Be sure you hold the rear end down when pulling the board out of the saw. To joint this, just hold it down on the back side, set it up first, like that. Be sure and hold it down as it's going in. Grip Tites are a terrific joiner accessory. They give you accuracy and safety, and it just takes a couple seconds to set them up. You can use your grip Tite on your bandsaw as well. We use the grip Tite as a point fence. The other side of the fence, springing, holding it against the original point fence. We also use it as a stop when we're cutting multiple cuts. Just push it in. Very easy to get an excellent cut. For cutting a rabbet in a piece of plywood, one way to do it is to add an auxiliary fence on, then raise the blade up into the wood. Just drill a couple holes in your fence plate and then screw the auxiliary fence on. With the board screwed on, raise that blade up. Using a zero clearance throat plate on dado cuts will give you a better and a safer cut. Then add a piece of steel up here so you can use the grip Tites. The steel plate doesn't need to be flush with the wood fence. You can add a filler strip to make the bottom flush with the top. This is useful when you want to rabbet a board on edge. set up the cut, lower the blade, put a grip tight on the plywood and push both over to the fence. Put the second one on, use the release to adjust it if you need to. Turn on the saw. Using this setup with an offset shim taped only behind the blade, you can joint any board, including particle board, with your carbide blade and table saw. This setup is best for cutting long, thin pieces for canoe strips or bent laminations. Pull on the veneer rather than the thick piece. You'll get better cuts. You can even cut really little pieces if you want to. You need a zero clearance throat plate to cut this piece because you have to support it on both sides. Run your blade down low. A little piece like this you can hold down right in front of the blade if you have a steel fence like this Sears fence here. On the back side you can do the same thing. You just created a terrific guard around the blade. The guard that came with the saw has to be removed to make this cut. And then you leave yourself open to hurt yourself. With the grip tights set up, you could put a box over the fence, grip tights, and tabletop. Push the wood through and you get a perfect cut. There's your cut. A safe cut every time. Remember, you need a zero clearance throat plate to run your little pieces and pieces on edge. Use your guard whenever you can. But as you move the fence closer to the blade, sooner or later you have to take off your guard. You have to take off your guard when you do upright cuts. You have to take off your guard when you do dado cuts. Instead of going without a guard, take a grip tight, put it right here. When you're cutting your plastics, like sand, brass, things like that, always put the fin just in front of the blade. If you take your second one and put it back here close to the other one, you've built yourself a guard close. Another thing you can do is to add a separate guard on, like I have here. It's the Lexan piece that I've attached to the top of the grip tight, and it goes here, and the second grip tight fits in right behind it. This gives me a really solid guard. No chips can come up and get me. As a matter of fact, on a little thin piece like this, I can't get to the blade no matter what I do. The grip tight won't move out of the way like an ordinary guard would. Remember, when you're cutting thicker pieces, you could push your hand in underneath the grip tight if you really tried. On the subject of safety, never move a grip tight while the blade is turning. You might have noticed that my blade stops awfully quickly. That's because my brother built me a blade brake. We'll have to talk to him about that. Just remember, make sure the blade is stopped before you move a grip tight. I'm going to take a minute and show you a splitter that I designed. Zero clearance throat plate to do this. Run the blade up through the throat plate, and then take a board, Use your grip tight and run it in part way. Then take it the same size as the kerf and drill down behind the blade and leave the drill bit. It's the best kerf keeper I know of. Before you do this, be sure that your blade is up all the way so you know where the end of the blade is. Of course, if you put your kerf keeper back here, and you put your grip tight behind the kerf keeper, you'll be able to use the roller. That means you'll even hold the kerf open on the back of the blade. When you're cutting a thin strip use the kerf keeper, fence and the blade. Use the roller and kickback fin in front of the blade and just the fin behind the blade. That way you won't pull the big piece over to the blade and burn your cut. When the blade is an inch from the fence, you can always use both fin and roller in front of the blade and behind the blade. This will give you the best cut possible. It's going to be wider than an inch between the blade and the fence, so I can use a second one with the roller. That'll help hold it over all the way through the cut. Use the second roller whenever you can. Go ahead and cut a piece of plexiglass. Using a grip tight, you can easily cut a board on edge. You can even put a dado in a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. Set up like this. Take your second one, tip it like that. Use the L to hold up high. That way you won't close the kerf down low. You can do the same thing when you're cutting the rabbit out of the piece. Be sure to hold down. This cut, always hold down while you're pushing in. Be sure to hold down the rear end as you pull it out and use a zero clearance throat plate. If you've run a dado in a piece of plywood and you want to cut the rabbit off, just put your fence up close, put a grip tight here where you don't want to put your fingers. Take a second grip tight. And don't put it down here like this because you'll close the kerf. Just put your L in here like that. Put it at an angle. And that'll hold up high and not down low. You can do a raised panel door like that with 2 of them. It's a lot quicker to make this cut than it is to put a dado blade in and make a few cuts to get that. It's also a lot cleaner. I do this when I want to put one piece of plywood up against another. I'll cut down to the veneer, put the other piece of plywood up next to it, and I don't show the bad edge. Of course, it's also a real easy way to liberate a veneer from your piece of plywood. And this will match the piece of plywood it came from, unlike the veneer you buy from the store. If you have a board that has a bad bow in it and you want to straighten it out, take a straight board, hold it down to the fence with a grip tight. Take your second grip tight on the deck and hold it over and down against the fence. Be sure to put the concave side of the board against your new long fence. Don't put too much pressure on the tabletop grip tight's fin. It has to bend as much as the board is bowed. With a good blade, you can get a glue line cut every time. Fences also come with countersunk holes and screws, so you can screw it right onto a wood fence that you add onto yours. Here's a wood fence. We screw through the back side. If you have a contractor saw, you screw through the holes in the fence into the wood, and then screw through our fence. Remember, when you mount your fence, leave about 3/4 of an inch or so between the top of the fence and the wood piece. Right here, and screw into it on the bottom. This is great for doing resaw cuts. If you don't have a contractor type fence, or you don't want to put a piece of wood on here, you can screw directly to an aluminum fence. This unisaw fence, the unifence, has a hole in the middle, and you can drill a hole here for the 4 holes, slight countersink, and we'll show you how to do that later, and attach the fence straight to it. Of course, you can also use a special double stick tape if you don't want to put holes in the fence. I will warn you, it's easier to take the fence off and put holes rather than put the acrylic on. This jet fence has been in our shop for 2 years, and it's stuck on with double stick tape. You see it's a little bit longer than the fence itself, but it doesn't really matter. So having a longer fence doesn't hurt. When you're using the grip tight, it's always good to hold the rear end of the fence down. Now this fence doesn't have a hold down, so we need to build a clip, a C-shaped piece that goes underneath a bar on the back side. A lot of fences are made like that. It's real easy to make a steel or plastic clip so it can't come up. It doesn't have to grab, but it does need to keep the fence from coming up. This isn't a jet fence. It's like a jet fence. It has a plastic piece on the side. I've taken the left side off. That's what you do on a jet fence, is take the plastic off, replace it with a piece of wood, and then attach our fence to it. This has a plastic clip on the back side that rides in the slot of the fence. If your fence has slots in the side, like the Home Depot saws, or the Sears saws, or the Jointech fences, then you can use a T-nut in here and attach directly to it if it is at the right level. If not, attach a wood fence and then screw into the wood with the steel plate.